So welcome everybody to our Adaptive Platform Trials virtual clinic run by the Australian Clinical Trials Alliance. Today we have Dr. Jiaying Chen joining us, who's from the George Institute. So Dr. Chen has 20 years experience in multi-center clinical trials and over 15 years experience designing and conducting large international stroke trials. And she's been involved in a large number of world-class trials, and including being the PI of a multifactorial, multi-arm, multi-stage randomized global adaptive platform trial for stroke, which is called ACT Global, which she's going to tell us about today, which she's hoping will be executed through 300 hospitals across 20 countries. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Chen. I'd like to start the meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today, which for me is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my personal respect to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So welcome to the clinic. We are going to have Dr. Chen's going to tell us about her study, and we have a panel of experienced people working in platform trials. So myself, I'm Kate Lee. I work at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, and I've been involved in a couple of platform trials which are just getting going at the moment. We're also hoping Steve Webb's going to join us, who works at St John of God Healthcare and Monash University, and he has lots of experience in adaptive platform trials, and in particular is the PI of, or was the PI of, the REMAP-CAP trial. We've also got Mitch Messer, who is a consumer representative, again, having worked on a number of adaptive platform trials. And finally, Cameron Green, who's the global project manager of the REMAP-CAP trial. So again, experienced but more hands-on with doing these trials. So thank you, panel members, for joining us. Of course, anybody is welcome to chip in, and we'd love to hear from everybody else as well, but we will look to the panel members to provide some feedback. And I see Steve's on the line now, so thank you, Steve. Just to acknowledge the work from ACTA, and this work around adaptive platform trials is supported by the MRFF, and the grant number is given on the slide there. So thank you for that. Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping. Can you please make sure you're on mute for the majority of the talk? If you do want to speak at the end, please put your hand up, or indeed if you have questions during, you're welcome to put your hand up, and I'll try and keep an eye on who's got their hand up. You can also use the chat box if you want to have questions. We'll try and get through them all. If we don't, we can always take them online afterwards. And then just to say, we are going to be recording this session, so I hope that's okay with everybody, but it means it's available afterwards if yourself or your colleagues want to listen. So as I said, we'll start with a talk about the study from Dr. Chen, and then there'll be time to hear from the panel and for a general question and answer session at the end. So thank you, everybody, and I will hand over to Dr. Chen to tell us about her study. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm presenting the ACT Global trial on behalf of all the ACT Global principal investigators, including Professor Craig Anderson, Professor B. Joy, and Michael and Andrew in Calgary. So this is a bit of the overview of what I'm going to talk. I'll briefly introduce the platform and the structures, and introduce acute ischemic stroke state, and a couple of examples of the domains, and then get into the details of the logistics and some questions I would like to discuss with the panels. So first, in terms of why we decided to start this platform trial, that was 2 years ago, and we had all these unresolved, unmet gaps in stroke research. It's mainly around acute ischemic stroke, in terms of the risk of thrombolysis, and what's the best dose to used for thrombolysis, and also when to use the thrombolysis agents is before the endovascular thrombectomy or afterwards to rescue the still blocked long distance arteries, and also whether it's the specific patient population, for example, if they have DOAC anticoagulations before their arrival of hospital, shall we give them thrombolysis? And also there are a lot of lytic and enhancers that is emerging that we haven't really demonstrated their efficacy. And also both in ischemic stroke and intracerebral hemorrhage, the optimal blood pressure control strategy, and there are a lot of interest also in neuroprotection therapies, anti-inflammation therapies. So there are so many questions that still not answered in stroke research. If we use a traditional way to answer each of these questions, it will take for ages. Like one question to be resolved, we need at least 5 years, and for so many questions, we probably will need a lifetime to resolve all of them. So adaptive platform trial design is something that attracted us. It can simultaneously testing multiple interventions and drop or add more interventions along the way, and using the adaptive process, and it can short the time to get answer, and use the accumulated data to really use the adaptive engine to increase the efficiency. So this is the overarching objectives we have for ACT Global, is to identify treatments that are associated with the highest chance of improving patient outcome in stroke. We have got some principles when we design this trials. We want the trial to be pragmatic. We want to include all the routine care data points and time points, and to be as close as possible with the routine care, what is happening practically in clinical practice. And we have a single trial master protocol, and we use the modular protocol design as the other platform trials. And we allowed adaptations, like if it's 3 treatment arms, we can drop 1 arm. If it's 2 or more than 2 strata, we can drop a stratum. And we also allows adaptation of sample size and enrichment, and frequent interim analysis as the other platform trials. Something that is a bit different for ACT Global, this happened since late last year. That's the previous protocol structure. As you can see, it's similar to the other platform trials. We have master protocol and the different layers, the modular appendix, the main appendix, region appendix, statistical documents. And then late last year, we decided to add an extra layer. It's called a state. And we defined the documents as a state sub-protocol. The reason why we added the state is because as we engaging with the different investigators around the globe, because in stroke there are so many different subtypes, and also in different therapeutical stages, they all have different settings. The population has different characteristics, and the routine care are not exactly the same. They have differences that is hard to fit into one master protocol or fit into one study procedure. So we have decided to add this extra layer of state. So we define the state as a specific disease entity, conditions, or characteristics. So in ACT Global, the state can be 2 types. One is the common target stroke subtype, For example, at the moment, we have acute ischemic stroke state and intracerebral hemorrhage state. And we have a plan to have different therapeutic stages as a state. Like we have new research ideas that is in prevention stage, that mainly secondary preventions, and then rehabilitation stages. These are the states that we potentially will add in future. So in master protocol, we included the background and the rationale to study a stroke, and also the common trial design aspects at platform level, and trial execution aspects and platform level. And most importantly is the trial global platform level governance structure. So what is in the sub-protocol is mainly the state level design aspects and state level like recruitment, follow-up timelines, and data included in the state, and the different management and risks in the state level. So here is the state we currently have and the different domains under each state. So we have acute ischemic stroke state. There are currently 4 domains under this state, and another new state is intracerebral hemorrhage state. We have 1 domain that is developed in this state. As previously mentioned, that's the master protocol, the protocol structure, master protocol eligibility. It's a platform eligibility, so we only include adults that has been diagnosed with stroke. That's the platform level principles in terms of randomization and the concealment of allocation, and all the platform level outcomes will be blinded to assessors. And platform level statistical principles like adaptation will be all used, and we'll have a frequent regular interim analysis, and also the different models and hypotheses, and all those detailed documents we in the master protocol level we all mentioned it's going to be included and defined in the domain specific documents. And we have a large amount of contents in the master protocol to describe about the governance. We have operational, that's on the top is the platform level governance. We have different committees, which includes the operations committee and the steering committee, and all other aspects include ethics, data, finance, and the industry regulators, engagement with patients, sites, statistics, imaging, and clinical events, and publication, and DSMC. That's the platform level governance. We also have domain level governance. That's mainly the domain steering committee and the domain level operations team. And then the bottom level is the regional different countries coordinating centers under the responsible participating sites. And here is the DSMC structure. We have 1 DSMC to cover all the domains. So 1 chair, and we will have different DSMC members to focus on specific domains. The following slides is just an example of what is included in a state and what is included in the different domains. So as we use acute ischemic stroke state as example, so we have acute ischemic stroke state eligibility that's all the patients that is diagnosed is acute phase of ischemic stroke. That's the common data that we're going to collect in this state. As you can see, it's mainly The gray data points are the routine collected data in the hospitals. The blue ones are the domain specific, and the yellow one is the outcome assessment. So 80% of the data are routinely collected in the hospital. That's the state level outcome. We try to have state level outcomes for each state. So if the domain has specific outcomes, they can specified in the domain appendix. In this acute ischemic stroke, we use utility weighted modifier ranking. That's a disability score that we use in stroke studies. We also have state level secondary outcomes, safety outcomes. And the following is just some examples. The first domain that we are going to start is the IV thrombolysis domain. So this is the rationale to have this domain. The tenecteplase has been emerging as kind of a replacement of alteplase for thrombolysis, and the approved dose is 0.25 at the moment. These subgroups of patients are generally excluded when one give thrombolysis because of uncertainty of the risks. It's mainly bleeding is uncertain for these subgroups. And that's the studies that have defined the 0.25 dose. But as you can see, the dose is tested on around 0.1, 0.25, 0.4. In this study, they demonstrated if you give thrombolysis before endovascular thrombectomy, there is a favorable trend to use we call it bridging thrombolysis before thrombectomy. It's beneficial, but this study hasn't been able to demonstrate the efficacy of tenecteplase. Why we want to test a different dose, that was inspired by our enchanted study, which was published 2016 probably. Yeah, in this study, we used alteplase, but we used 2/3 of the dose. Unfortunately, in this study, we miscalculated the inferiority margin. We were to use relative risk, but we used odds ratio, and we used the wrong inferiority margin. But if we use the correct inferiority margin, we were actually able to demonstrate the inferiority of 2/3 of the standard dose. So inspired by this study, we wanted to see whether for tenecteplase, 1/3 of the labeled dose can actually be inferior to or even superior to the standard dose. So that's the questions we're going to be answered in this domain. It's for the patients that are going to be given IV thrombolysis, what is the best dose? And for the patients who used DOAC before they arrive hospital within 24 hours, or the patient who is going to be given an endovascular thrombectomy, whether we give them thrombolysis or not. If we give them thrombolysis, what's the best dose? And so in this domain, we have 4 strata. In this domain, for different stratas, they will be randomized either into the different dose or no thrombolysis or different dose. And the triggers that we designed for this study includes to drop one of the stratum. So that's an adaptive design of this study. I'm not going to go into the details, but we have been supported by Barry consultants. So we have go through a lot of simulations, a lot of discussions to define all these figures. In the adaptation, we looked into superiorities, inferiority, lack of significant benefits. And the second example I'm demonstrating is the blood pressure domain. The whole idea came from a survey that was conducted. Is for the patients that is going through thrombectomy. Afterwards, the blood pressure control target from clinicians varies a lot. There was no standard or guideline consensus about what is the best blood pressure target for this group of patients. And so far, there have been 4 studies around the blood pressure target after thrombectomy. This is one of them. It's called BP target. It failed to really demonstrate any efficacy of intensive blood pressure target. And that's our study. It's called in22MT. We were initially to demonstrate a superiority efficacy, but the study was stopped early because of harm, actually. So the study ended up demonstrating a lower blood pressure target, which is 120, is actually harmful for this group of patients. And that's another study called BEST2. It also failed to demonstrate any efficacy. That's another study. It's called optimal BP, that is in a Korean population. Similar to in22MT, it has demonstrated harm for the intensive blood pressure lowering group. Their blood pressure lowering target reached to 120. Like it's so far we actually have evidence, harmful evidence for the blood pressure target below 130. We haven't really figured out the optimal blood pressure target or management strategy above 130 or about 140. So we have been thinking whether the target, like for the previous studies, is all absolute blood pressure target. Whether it's a relative target, that is something that we should actually look into instead of absolute target. So that's a review after all the trials. We have then designed this domain to investigate the different relative reductions of blood pressure based on patients' baseline blood pressure level. So it's like a personalized blood pressure management strategy. So we have inclusion criteria this, and also it's there will be adaptations along the way. Same as the other domain we had. We went through a lot of simulations and then defined these triggers related to superiority, inferiority, and the equivalence of the 3 interventions. So if put it into a patient's clinical workflow, the IV thrombolysis domain fit into the early stage after patient's arrival, after imaging diagnosis, and the BP domain fits into when the patients finish the thrombectomy in procedure. If their blood pressure is elevated, then the blood pressure domain will be fitting. So that's an overview of the 2 domains. So yeah, what I mentioned before is just some examples of how we define state and how the domains are usually structured. So for the current state and the domain, we have 3 domains are ready to recruit. Once we have database ready, we will start to recruit for the 3 domain. One is the thrombectomy, IV thrombolysis domain, blood pressure domain, and Acta 42 domain. This is neuroprotection drug is only conducted in Canada. We have done site initiations both in Canada and Australia. We are expanding the other countries as well. Another two domains that is under development is the IA's intra-artery tenectoplase domain, and one is the ICH domain. That's factorial. There is a factorial design in this domain. It's mainly for intracerebral hemorrhage patients after the hospital arrival, to use deferoxin and colchicine to prevent the secondary brain injury from inflammation and iron. So that's the grants we have so far received, mainly from Canada, Australia, and China for the different domains. And this is some ethical development we sort of have in terms of consenting. So in the framework of a consenting framework, we allow different consent options. We allow deferral of consent, also rapid verbal consent, or written informed consent before enrollment. So all these options, like we allow them based on the local regulation or ethics requirements. But deferral of consent is the default recommended consent model we would like to recommend to each of the ethics committee. And also there is other options we allow, like waive of consent and even advanced consent. So that's some rationales we have why, because different consent can save time, like acute, especially for acute ischemic stroke and ICH state is in the acute phase. So time is brain. Time is very important. To save time to do the consent can actually save the life, save the outcome. So that's the consent framework. As I mentioned, we allow different variations, depends on whether it's approved. It can be approved locally in the different jurisdictions. And the trial registration, we have managed to register the master protocol, and at the same time we register different domains. And in the different registrations, there is a link that we link the master protocol to each of the domain, and so if you look into the master protocol registration, you will be able to click the link and go direct into the different domains. And otherwise, you can also go into the domain registration, go back to the master registration, have an overview. So the master protocol registration only included the different domain names and in the interventions and the platform level principles that you used. But the domain registrations have all the details of each of the domain. So that is mainly to ensure the transparency of reporting of the different domains progress and outcomes. And in terms of statistics and the data, so the database is customized, designed database that is hosted in Canada. And in terms of statistics, we have Barry consultants support the study from design to the interim analysis and the final analysis at the moment. We have statistical committee. In statistical committees, we have two teams. One is blinded team and unblinded team. So blinded teams is responsible for the design of the different domains, and the unblinded team are mainly responsible to do interim analysis. And as you can see, they all have different interactions with Barry consultants and the SMC and steering committee and regulators if needed. And the operational framework with so this study is not a sole sponsor globally. We have the George Institute and the University of Calgary as the co-sponsor for the study globally. So for each aspect of the study, we have people from the George Institute and the University of Calgary to work together as a team for all the aspects of the trial. And then in terms of managing the sponsorship of the different regions, we tried to split the world. The University of Calgary is responsible for North America and Europe and India and some of the countries here. And then the George Institute is responsible for Asia, Australia, and South America. And we have this plan to split different countries in Africa because we have different connections in different countries in Africa. In terms of communication, we do have many meetings with the different subjects and the different communities, and the operational teams tend to have more frequent communications. And we're also setting up the different regional coordinating centers, so there are frequent communications with the different regions as well. And the study documents, we haven't really have any trial master file or clinical trial management system implemented. We are using Teams, SharePoints to manage the documents. And we have study plans, SOPs, and manuals developed for the platform level. Like all the documents are modular format, like platform level, and then have the different domains as appendix or region as an appendix. So one question that is emerging recently is there are a lot of interest to join the platform. So we are trying to figure out how to really accommodate all these needs, and at the same time considering the expansion of the team and the resource that we have and the planning resource. So yeah, we welcome the different research questions. And there are a lot of benefits for the different research question owners or principal investigators to join the platform and save their time, save their money. And we are definitely having a global networks and collaborations that is going to be established, which can save a lot of the energy. This is a flow chart we proposed. It's not finalized yet. So because we have principal investigators mainly now in the George and the Calgary, so we propose if any of the investigators they are interested to join the platform, they can have this. We generated a simple template for them to complete, so they can raise their research question to us, and then we will have internal review with the PIs at the moment. And if there are more questions need to be discussed, we will discuss with the research question principal investigator to clear any confusion or anything that is not clarified. And then we will bring the question to the platform level steering committee for the review and approval. If they think this is a good question to be added in the platform, then we make the decision to add the research question to the platform. Then we will form a design team. It's mainly the statistical team, blinded team, and the PIs of the research question to form this team and work with Barry or work with our other design team to refine the design of that research question. Once that is finished, then we will start to develop a protocol. If the research question owner has funding ready, then we can straight go into the machine or the engine to start the startup preparation and then kick off. But if they don't have funding, we will support them to explore or apply different grants. Once the funding is ready, then we can put it into the operational team and get the research question started. So we sort of think about what kind of criteria we should include when we consider adding a domain. Like firstly, it should be a good research question. It should be really a burning need or gap in literature. And we want the research question, the platform to have global impact. And the research question owners or the PIs needs to have an open mind and be adaptive to the potential innovative adaptive design that we would like to have in the platform. And also we are open to any exciting execution challenges. But this is something that we need to have boundary as well, because if it's too challenging, it may not be practical to implement. And the fifth is the funding, which is a key to implement. And also the last one is we really want to be inclusive. But yeah, that's also something that needs a fine balance to be inclusive and at the same time to be a win-win partnership, I guess. Yeah, so that's the questions I would like to ask the panels today. Is like from the experience of the other platform trials, what kind of key rules or processes you have when you consider adding a new domain to your platform, and also in terms of the sustainability of a platform trial, like in what kind of model we should build in, because now I can see that it's such a big need, and I can see if we keep accepting the different research questions, the team has to expand, and we need a lot of resources. Then whether we need a model or business plan to really make the platform trial sustainable. Another thing is, like from what I presented, is anything the panel would like to recommend that we should consider as well for the ACT Global trial? Thank you so much. That's all my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jiaying, for that amazing overview of your study. You've clearly all put a lot of time and effort into it. It's quite an incredible study. So there are a couple of questions in the chat, but I think we might first throw it open to the panel members for comments and perhaps any thoughts on, well, the study in general, but Jiaying's questions that she's posed at the end. So Mitch, Cameron, Steve, do you have any comments on any of what Jiaying's mentioned? Mitch?
Yeah, I might as well kick off. Look, that's certainly a huge amount of work that you're wanting to do, and I noticed all of the people involved in that. My question really is, do you have consumers involved in this in terms of any of those committees, and in helping you decide if questions are important as well? Because community would potentially have questions that they would like to answer in terms of stroke and outcomes for stroke and improving that, and also about what that would mean for the interventions for people, and those consent models you had as well, and all the ethics around that. So do you have that sort of input?
Yes, we do have a consumer panel, but we use a different name. Just give me a second. Yeah, we have a industry. We have ethics. Yeah, ethics, patient and community engagement committee. In this committee, we have at the moment we have Calgary consumer panel. They also they have from memory they have about 20 consumers, And we have in the George Institute, we have 12 or 15 we call brain health panel. We both regularly report back to the two different panels. So far, the idea has been around the acceptance of participating in a platform trial like this, and the consent model that we recommend. They have got, because we are developing different consent templates and consent supporting documents, including a short sheet to support the consenting, and also videos. So they have input a lot to this, all the different aspects as well.
Yeah. Okay. Do they have, you know, and you mentioned the number of studies and number of domains that people might want to include. Yeah. Do they have are they part of the group that decides whether it's a good idea to add that domain?
Oh, adding a new domain, we didn't specifically ask them whether they think it's a good idea to add or not. Like we tend to present the research question straight away instead of ask them from a platform as a whole point of view, how do they feel to have that research question. But for each of the research question, we do ask them how do they feel about this, whether it's important for them.
Yeah, I guess probably my question was asking. Yeah, that's the thing I was getting at. Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Maybe the next time is when we decide whether to add a question, is to ask them how do they feel to add this extra question? What's the impact of their decision making?
Yeah, do you? I mean, and there, because obviously it's a big issue and it affects people greatly. So there's a lot of people with experience of being having stroke, or also being families of stroke, and there's a lot of organisations who are in community as well. And do you talk to them about those sorts of questions, either here or through Calgary? So the more broad.
You mean more broad platform concept?
Well, you know, the things like the Stroke Foundation or the stroke community organisations.
Yeah. We do have
those sort of organisations. Are they involved in? Do you bring them into your planning and thinking and overarching? Because I noticed you've got a huge number of committees and different people in there. And when you said you've got the ethics and industry and community sort of arm of that's one part of that. But I'm just wondering, how do you actually bring in? Because there's obviously questions that community would like to know that may be different to what you would like to know. And how do you get to those questions to get a question asked that they might want, rather than you saying, this is the question we want to ask, is it okay?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Yes. I guess the next consumer meeting that we're going to have, which is in June, that I can potentially ask the consumers to contribute the research question they think is important for them.
I guess bringing that whole conversation on, so that you can have a conversation with people. I know that, I mean, what I've been involved in, that's been part of the say, and also even design, because we had a platform trial I've been involved in. Domain was being designed, and then the community people said, we need to add this into what the question that you're asking in that domain, because there's a bit that we find is no one knows the answer to, and you can't continue to do evidence-based medicine without evidence. So they actually helped change the question, even when it had come from clinicians. So, and that's just fine. So there's a rich vein of people can help. especially when you're looking for funding as well with MRFF and NHMRC and needing to actually show how you're involving community to get your funding. And with the statement, the NHMRC statement being reviewed at the moment, I think that's only going to get stronger. So building those into the foundations of the work is probably important for everyone now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Mitch. Yeah.
I won't hog it anymore.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Mitch.
so much.
I think it's very important to remember the importance of consumers in planning and guiding these studies. So it's been an important conversation. Cameron, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just thought maybe I could comment on some of those questions around the addition of domains and assessing those. In Remap Cup, we've been through that quite a few times over a short period of time. I think, and apologies if I've misunderstood anything, but it looked like in the first instance, the conversation was with the two PIs from each of the sponsors about the suitability of the domain. I think, and along the lines of what Mitch was saying, I think it might be useful to expand that to a sort of a prioritization committee is what we call ours. And I think that probably should include a consumer representative, but also I would suggest that the members of the statistical design team should be a part of that.
Yeah.
And maybe some of those other key committees, finances. Sorry, if there's a question around whether something is feasible from that respect. I think one other thing that I don't think was explicitly said in your list of considerations was feasibility. And so what I mean by that is, you expect to have a lot of participating sites, and I think the ability of a site to access interventions across, a wide geographical area that you've specified, their willingness to participate. So you may find that some regions are happy to participate, others are not. And yeah, the cost of potentially accessing a drug, if this trial won't provide it, then we've certainly found that we've written domains where we've included interventions that are very expensive in some regions and are just prohibitive. So that's I suppose feasibility side of things is an important consideration.
Yeah.
And then just another comment is it's not just new domains that you need to probably think about. Over time, you might also have modifications to existing domains and maybe have a think about whether the process is the same. If someone wants to say bring a new intervention into an existing domain, whether say a domain closes and then reopens with a new question, whether that will be the same process or something else. So just some thoughts, but yeah, I definitely suggest having a committee probably, or a group that's tasked with assessing those things from multiple perspectives, not just the sort of PI, but also a site feasibility. So you might have a site research coordinator or research staff member, consumer representatives, and certainly the statistical design team to assess the impact on the model.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. Yeah, I think it's adding that holistic aspects of decision making isn't. It's not only the scientific part. Yeah, I agree.
And that can triage things before it goes to your trial steering committee.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cameron. Steve, over to you. You're on mute, Steve.
Xiaoying, this is a superb platform, absolutely amazing stuff. I'm going to try and add a few things in addition to what Cam said about adding a domain, but more from a design, execution, operation perspective. Step to get some additional background information that I kind of need to be able to comment validly. Can you tell me what data management process you're using to assess eligibility, and whether it reassesses eligibility at different time points?
The database that we are going to use is a customized, tailored system. It's not spiral. It's not. It's with the. It's a vendor with the University of Calgary.
I wasn't thinking so much about I wasn't thinking so much about who's doing it, but I wanted to understand the principles that you're using an eligibility system that will acquire information that is necessary to assess eligibility to different domains. But can you acquire all information that is necessary at one time point, or do you need to add additional information over time?
Yeah, so because of the nature of the different domains, it's, as I mentioned, it's sitting in the different workflow, clinical workflows, different time points of the workflows, and the patient's eligibility doesn't really decided upfront. Some of the eligibility has to be rechecked again after certain procedures.
Yep.
So the eligibility is checked at different time points, and the randomization happens at different time points as well.
Okay, so the first thing to say is, because this is Berry, I am certain that they are managing in a statistically appropriate way that randomization is occurring at different time points. But when an eligibility system needs to collect information at multiple different time points for multiple different domains, there is a lot of complexity to the eligibility system. And when a new domain is added, the complexity goes up sometimes exponentially with each new domain, because there are variables that are used in assessing eligibility that may be used in the same or different ways in each new domain. What might be an inclusion criteria for one domain can be an exclusion for another domain. There are some variables, the value of which doesn't change, like, age or sex at birth, or the type of stroke, and you don't want to recollect information that you've already collected once.
Yeah.
But then there are variables that are dynamic and do change, and you'll face the challenge that you might need 5 or 6 points of information to determine eligibility for a new domain, and they may become available at slightly different time points. And if you, so you have to manage the dynamic availability of the information, particularly if you collect it at one time point. The actual value that's relevant at the time that the last bit of information becomes available may have changed, influencing eligibility. So one of the very first things that you need to do in considering a new domain is understand how it's going to fit into your eligibility system. And there is the possibility of it not being capable of being accommodated. You may also have the same variable being applied at different time points in different ways in different domains. So I'll give a simplistic example. Let's say you've got a domain where current renal function is relevant as an exclusion criteria, or it influences the dose of something that's going to be administered within the platform. Your creatinine can change over a couple of days, and the threshold creatinine that represents the point at which exclusion would occur could be different in different domains. So the eligibility system has to be able to manage all of these elements that are both dynamic and different cut points for the same continuous variable. The second thing is that, I did make note of this at the time, you seem to have different operational teams for each domain, and that may not be a advisable structure. And, you know, Cam might have views on this, but it comes to be quite quickly that there are coordination or compatibility issues with each domain that have interdependencies between domains that may not be manageable when you have separate operational teams. So we will, and the last thing that you want to avoid is a domain team writing a domain-specific appendix in ways that are using language or nomenclature or approach or terminology that is not consistent across the entire platform. Where one domain is saying it is going to do something, that it has to be expressed in the same way in each domain-specific appendix with ironclad consistency, because to not have that consistency is to risk ambiguity and confusion at the site level when they look at two domains and they're not sure what they should be doing. Cam, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that issue.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think there's a big job here for someone to sit centrally and make sure that certainly the protocol documents are aligned and can work together, but also that, you know, all of those various committees that you have, which, you know, there are a lot there, are all sort of speaking the same language and knowing what's going on across the platform. I think, yeah, Steve's exactly right. I think each domain needs to have central coordination to make sure that what's being proposed can fit into the bigger picture.
In REMAP-CAP, we have a domain-specific working group who kind of take a domain to a point where there's a clear idea of the rationale, the nature of the intervention, but then to a substantial extent, it's passed over to a central team, which makes sure that it's sort of REMAP-CAPified and compatible with everything else that's within the platform.
Yeah.
Thank you both. That's some very useful advice. I'm aware it's 1 o'clock, but just 2 more minutes. There's a quick question from Nick in the chat about when you need to get ethics approval and amendments. And I think the answer is yes. Whenever you have a new domain, that would be in your appendix. You'd need to put in an ethical amendment before you could start recruiting to that domain or that new arm. I'm involved in a platform trial, and we're putting with the core, we haven't started yet, the core protocols going into ethics as a document to start working with the ethics committee and getting them used to the trial. And then after that, we will then submit the domain-specific appendices down the track. I was just going to raise quickly, the last questions in the chat are both about the budget. So, Xiaoying, I don't know if you can give us a quick idea of the budget that you've got for ACT Global and what the costs have been so far, and also what the model is for your budget in terms of supporting the operations.
Yeah, we do have a finance committee that is overseeing all the budget and expenditures. So we have different regions, countries. So we're trying to map the budgets into a centralized file and review and get agreements regularly. Or we haven't really set up the frequency now, but at the moment we are doing that based on region specific budgets and then consolidated in a global level. But the funding that we so far have got, I haven't got the total number. It's probably around 15 million. It's not exact number, sorry, I can't really provide.
Do you know what, you're about to get started imminently by the sound of things, and what kind of budget you've spent so far?
No, sorry, I don't have the number. I probably need to ask our finance committee lead about the
Yeah.
number.
Fair enough. So Nick and Tanya, if you have any more questions, you could email them to ACTRA and we can pass them on to Xiaoying
Yeah,
if she
sure.
will answer them for you. It's gone 1 o'clock, so I feel like we should end it there. But thank you very much, Xiaoying. I mean, good luck with your study. Like I said, like we've all said in the chats, it's an amazing venture and you've clearly put a lot of work in. So good luck and all the best, and come back and report to us and let us know how you're going. And thank you very much, Steve, Cameron, and Mitch, for your very useful input. And I hope you found that useful, Xiaoying.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for the very valuable comments and recommendations. It's very important.
Thank you, everybody.